All right, here we are in Job chapter 6. I'm hoping that you have listened to the first three audios that I put out there. One is covering chapter 1. If you're interested in this study, then I really hope that you'll listen to it because it's absolutely foundational to the rest of the book of Job and the study that I'm going through with this. There's also an audio for chapter 2 and then another audio covering chapters 3, 4, and 5. So there's three audios out there on YouTube. This is the fourth one and it's covering chapter 6 where Job is going to be speaking. And his speech continues on into chapter 7, but we're only going to be covering chapter 6 on this audio. And I'll let you know why at the end. So we just got done considering what Job's friend Eliphaz had to say in chapters 4 and 5. And the message in a nutshell was, Brother Job, you have either known or unknown sin in your life. I respect you. So most likely it's probably, something you are not even aware of. But innocent, upright people who fear God don't have this kind of trouble dished out on them, and people with integrity don't get their hope stripped away like you have. So, just get to the bottom of your issue, and whatever you did to get off track, just get your stuff together and your blessings will return. And this is what Eliphaz had to say in a nutshell over the course of chapters 4 and 5. Now, I'm not going to make any jokes about Eliphaz taking 2 full chapters of diatribe just to tell Job that he must be doing something wrong or else he wouldn't be suffering, because I'm quite a long-winded person myself. So I'm not going to be talking about somebody else taking a long time to say what they have to say like Eliphaz did. But here we are in Job chapter 6. Now Job is speaking again. The first time he spoke in chapter 3, he expressed that he wished he was never born. Why be born to be so blessed and then have everything taken away and have your life become essentially a living hell? This was Job's question in chapter 3. And we noted a drastically different thing happened in his disposition, where it changed between chapters 2 and 3. He started off saying, God is good no matter what. The Lord lives and the Lord takes away. He told his wife, we have to take the bad along with the good. He was going to bless the Lord at all times, and God's praise was going to continually be in his mouth. And he was saying all these things even after he had lost everything, and was still saying these things after the second attack, which destroyed his health. So what changed between chapter 3, from chapter 2, and now in chapter 3, he's now cursing the day of his birth and wishing that he never existed. What changed was the amount of time that had gone by. He could deal with everything being stripped away and broken, but he had difficulty handling the fact that by this time, things still weren't fixed and restored. And I told you that going through great pain and trouble becomes a bona fide trial when the whole thing just starts to last way too long. That's when it becomes a trial. So in chapter 6, we're picking up here, and Job is responding to Eliphaz. Now, the first observation that I'm bringing out of chapter 6 is Job is telling us how he really feels. You ever have somebody tell you something and they kind of go off and they really, really, really say what's on their mind, and then you say, brother, tell me how you really feel. So that's what Job is doing here. Starting at verse 1, it says, Job answered and said, he's answering Eliphaz. He said, oh, that my vexation were weighed and all my calamity weighed in the balances, for then it would be heavier than the sand of the sea. Therefore, my words have been rash. One of the main reasons I'm breaking these chapters down into what I'm calling observations is not only because they are things that are standing out to me, but because I see their relevancy, application, and relation to my own experiences. And because I'm human and you're human, I'm strongly suspecting that many of you can relate to many of the same things. Now, at this point, I feel extremely confident based upon Job's words in this chapter and the subsequent chapters up until he meets God at the end, that as bad as he might feel in different ways, his spiritual and emotional pain is far outweighing his financial and physical pain. Remember, the test was initiated against Job not to see whether or not he would be upset about becoming poor and sick. It was to see if the emotional toll would cause him to crack and curse God to his face. So Job is feeling it by this point in time. Now Job says, I'm using rash language, and I know I'm saying stuff that might get me in trouble later on, but this is heavy. The pain I feel is deep, Job is saying. The loss of my children, the loss of my health, the loss of my wealth, the loss of my status, and the fact that I've been going through this for so long. And this is the big one. This is the big one. Job is saying that, and we'll get into this more deeply in later chapters, because it's one of the most difficult aspects of Job's trial. Job is in pain due to the loss of who he understood God to be. And so he's saying, I'm hurt, and I'm going to say what I have to say about this. This stinks. This is not cool. Well, like my wife likes to say, Tiff likes to say, this is for the birds. Now, are there any of you like me who have been in this place where you are so hurt, so confused, so frustrated, feeling so little hope, feeling angry, feeling ticked off at God because you thought that according to his word, he would have already done something to help your situation by now. And so you just let it all out and you say what you have to say. And if you have someone, who's listening to you, they're like, whoa, like I said, tell me how you really feel, Ron. I've been the one listening to someone else in this place, letting everything out, and I have been the one letting it out. Maybe not everyone can relate to this, or, you've never been in that place, but I know all about it. And this is where Job is. And he is explicitly telling Eliphaz and us that this is where he is. And we're getting down into verse 4, and it's the second observation. And I'm calling this observation 2, God gets the blame. Job says in verse 4, he says, for the arrows of the Almighty are in me. My spirit drinks their poison. The terrors of God are arrayed against me. Now Job says, I'm being devastated because the arrows of the Almighty are in me. In other words, as far as Job is concerned, this is God causing him this pain. This perspective of Job's is more interesting than what it seems like on the surface, because there's several layers of action that are actually in play, and it brings up a theological conundrum. I like that word, conundrum, that people have been wrestling with for ages. That conundrum, or that difficult question, is this: what isn't God's fault? What isn't God's fault? People have been struggling with that question for ages. Job says that the painful arrows that I feel piercing me, piercing my heart, piercing my emotional stability, these arrows are from God, Job says. Now, in Job's particular circumstance, it's funny because he doesn't even know how absolutely right he is. we established in the first 2 chapters that Job's trial was indeed initiated by God. It was administrated and carried out by Satan, but it was initiated by God. But we know that not every trial is initiated by God. We know sometimes we are attacked by the enemy, not because God brought our name up, but because we are hated by the enemy. There are several passages in the Bible. Tiff and I were just talking about them the other day, where God says, you know, you're about to be attacked, or you're getting attacked by these Chaldeans. I think what comes to my mind is in Habakkuk, where he says, hey, the Chaldeans are coming against you, but it's not by me. I'm not the one sending them. Now, God, he's good for that. He will use foreign nations throughout the Bible against Israel to bring judgment upon them. And these are some wicked, nasty people who want to do damage to Israel. But God would say openly, hey, I am using them to come against you because I am judging you. So I'm using the Chaldeans to come against you. But there have been some cases where God says, this is not happening because of me. I'm not behind this one. But you are being attacked because these people hate you. So sometimes we do get attacked just because the enemy is coming against us. We know sometimes we suffer due to the consequences of our own actions and our own stupidity. But when the suffering becomes great, it still brings back up that theological conundrum. Even if God didn't start this, can't he make it stop? Even if he didn't start this, couldn't he have not allowed it to start? So in this case, Job doesn't even know that it was God who initiated this by bringing his name up to Satan and accepting the challenge against Job that he knew Satan would propose when he brought his name up. Which I said before, Job probably would have told God as nicely as he could if he knew this was going on. Like, Lord, please keep my name out of your mouth. But Job didn't have an opportunity to do that. But Job was, he was not privy to the fact that God literally started all this. But it didn't matter because Job was plagued by the same question that we all have from time to time. What isn't God's fault? Job is saying, these are your arrows against me, God, because even if someone else is firing them, you can keep them from piercing me. Or you can stop who's ever firing these arrows from firing them at me. So it's still on you because I'm your guy, I'm your man, I love you, I serve you, I fear you, I honor you. So if something is coming at me like this, it's still on you. And so since you're not stopping these arrows, they might as well be yours. It doesn't matter if you're literally firing them or if you're allowing them to be fired. You're the one who's still responsible for me and what happens to me because I love you. So as far as Job is concerned, these are God's arrows being fired into him, and they hurt. Now, maybe, some of you have never thought or felt this way. And you're probably the same people who never spoke rashly, like we just discussed. But Job is speaking rashly. And Job is thinking and feeling this way. And I can personally relate so closely to Job because I have thought and felt this way. Now, I want to be clear about something. I am talking about the appearance of what it seems like God does or doesn't do on the surface. The simple, finite-minded viewpoint of things seeming like they are God's fault because of him failing or refusing to do what you really believe that he can do about it. It gives us a wrong view. That's what we see and that's what we feel, but it's not necessarily accurate. So first of all, that's a deep subject that we're going to touch on more towards the end of the study in the last chapters of the book. But also, I want to share with you that I've learned that there is no viable argument against God. His case is airtight. This is not a mean or self-deprecating comment about us as human beings. It's just the honest truth, which is our minds literally and simply do not have the capacity at this point to understand God's decision-making processes. We can't do it. One day we'll be able to get it, but right now we can't process a whole lot of God's processes. We can't understand enough of his ways to be able to have some type of argument against him, because he often does things that we don't like, or he doesn't do things that we want him to do, or he does things that we wish that he wouldn't do, or he does things that don't line up with our understanding of him, and we try to put him inside of a box and he does not behave. I tell people all the time, God does not behave. As soon as you think you have him figured out and you got him in a box, and as long as you do X, Y, and Z, and you have, all your stuff, lined up, all your ducks in a row, that God is going to behave like this and always do this and always make this happen and always work things out like X, Y, and Z, and he does not behave. He'll blow your stuff up. As soon as you think you got him figured out, and if you just do this, he's going to do that. And as soon as you think you have him, like, yeah, I got the formula, I know how to get God to do what I want him to do formula, he will blow your stuff up. So, we can't fully understand him right now. The Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 13, he said, right now it's like we see through a glass darkly. It's like a tinted window, and we're looking through it, and we can see stuff. We can see some of how God operates, and we can see, some of, the way things work and how things operate and the things that the scriptures do reveal to us, and we are trying to understand them as best as we can. But Paul says it's like a tinted window. We can't see everything clearly. He said, even when we preach and teach, he said, we can only preach and teach in part. Why? He said, because we can only understand in part. Our understanding right now is limited. Therefore, anything we preach or teach, what I'm teaching right now, it is limited because my understanding is limited. I cannot preach or teach in the exact fullness of all that God knows, because I don't know what God knows, and no teacher knows what God knows. So no one can preach to that degree of fullness. Everything that we're preaching, everything that we're teaching is on a partial, tinted level. And that's what Paul was trying to say. He said, but, when I was a child, I thought like a child. Everything was limited. Everything was constrained to a childlike way of thinking. But when I became a man, I was able to understand stuff. And so that's what's happening here. It's making me think about my son Joshua. I remember him when he was about 4 years old, and he was asking me about my job and the work that I do at my job. He's just a little boy. And, I realized I was going to try to describe to him what I did in computer programming and, how, functions work and store procedures and triggers and all these different algorithms of, how I program computers to get them to do different things and whatnot. And I realized that as smart and bright of a little boy he was, I could really take the time to try to explain every detail of what I was doing so that he could understand it, but he was not capable. He literally, with his 4-year-old level mind, he literally could not understand what I did at work. Now Josh is 15, about to be 16, and the boy is really smart. He's very brilliant. if he were still interested now, I could show him what I do. I can turn on my computer, show him my computer code, and he would be able to, I could explain it to him, and I'm sure he would understand it. There was a time in his life where he couldn't understand. Now he can. I remember when I was 12 years old, and my mom probably remembers this story, and I've told it before, but I was 12 years old, and I might have been 11, I saw a remote control car in the Kmart catalog. And the car was $19.99, $19.99. And I asked my mother to buy me that car. I said, Mom, can I have this car? It's on sale for $19.99. And she said, no, Junior, I can't get that for you right now. And so I said, yes, ma'am. A little bit later, so happens that my mother left her purse on the table, on the kitchen table. And I saw inside of her purse a crispy, it wasn't even old. It was like a fresh new $50 bill. Looked like she just got it from the bank or something. Now, I didn't steal the money. I have my faults and issues. I have not been a thief. But I saw that money, and I remember being hurt. I was like, man, Mom told me that she couldn't buy me this car. Now, at that time, I thought like a child, and I reasoned like a child. And so the dangerous thing about childlike thinking is not only do you not know stuff, it's bad enough to not know stuff, but it's worse when you don't know stuff, but you actually do know a little bit of stuff that makes you think that you know more than what you know. So in my childlike thinking, not only did I not understand why she couldn't buy that car for me, but in my childlike reasoning, I actually knew a little bit of math. I was 11, 12 years old. So I knew that she could buy that car for $20. And not only did she have enough money to buy that car, but she would have $30 left over. And she's talking about she can't buy me this car. Car costs $20. Mom has $50. My childlike reasoning says, you can buy me this car. You told me you couldn't, but you can, and you still have some money left over. That's the way I thought when I was a child. I couldn't understand why her answer was no after I saw the $50 bill. Why would she tell me no? When I became a man, or I didn't have to become a full man, after a few years passed, I was able to understand why my mother having a $50 bill did not necessarily constitute her ability to spend 20 of it on a toy when she's trying to put groceries in the refrigerator. So that's an example of the way we think on a childlike level. And so Job is saying, as far as from my perspective, I don't really know what's going on, but to me, God is causing me this pain. And whether he's doing it directly or whether he's allowing it to happen, it's still on him because he's my God and he could do something about it. This is very similar to what the writer, a lot of the psalmists are saying is very much the same thing that you read in the book of Lamentation by Jeremiah. He's saying the same thing. This is God causing me this pain. All right, I'm going to move on. Observation number 3 is looking at verses 5 through 13. Observation 3, Job is ready to check out. He's at that point where he's ready to check out of here. He's ready to call life quits. Verse 5, he says, does the wild donkey bray when he has grass, or the ox low over his fodder? Can that which is tasteless be eaten without salt? Or is there any taste in the juice of a mallow? My appetite refuses to touch them, for they are as food that is loathsome to me. Oh, that I might have my request, he says in verse 8, and that God would fulfill my hope. What does he want God to do? What is he asking God to fulfill? Verse 9, he says, that it would please God to just crush me. That he would let loose his hand and cut me off. This would be my comfort. I would even exult in pain unsparing, for I have not denied the words of the Holy One. What is my strength that I should wait? And what is my end that I should be patient? Is my strength the strength of stones, or my flesh bronze? Have I any help in me when resource is driven from me? Job saying, God, you either have taken everything away from me, or you have allowed everything to be taken away from me, including my understanding of who you are. So please at least do this for me. Just kill me. I'm tired. Job said, I wish you would just crush me. Just take your hand off of me and stop waking me up in the morning. And he said, and this is all messed up for me even to be in this place, because I have not denied your word. I have not disobeyed you. Is this the life that upright people get? Is this the way it goes for people trying to obey you and live the right way? It reminds us again of some of the Psalms. Why are the wicked prospering? And why is my life, as someone who fears you, all jacked up? And then he goes on to say, how much do you expect from me? Basically, this is what he's saying in verses 11 and 12 and 13. He said, what do you expect? I'm just a man. How much strength do you think I have to keep waiting for something to change? What kind of hope do I have to draw upon that would cause me to think that anything is ever going to get better if I stick around? I'm only human. Is my strength like the strength of stones? Is my body made out of bronze? Am I made out of metal? Am I like a robot that doesn't, feel any pain or begin to break down or begin to hurt or begin to, it's like, no, I'm just human and I'm losing it. I'm breaking down. I can't keep standing. So just take me out. I'm out. I'm done. Please let me go. Because I don't know what you expect from me. I'm just human. I'm not a robot with no feelings and no emotions and no pain. I'm human and I'm breaking down. All right. So this is where Job is. Which leads us on to observation 4. Which I'm going to give this observation an interesting name. I'm going to call this observation, and I'll explain it later because it's going to sound weird, but this observation is Job eats Eliphaz's head and kicks it back to him. Now I'm going to read the scripture while y'all think about how weird I am for saying that, and then I'll explain it. But I'm going to read down through from verse 14 down through verse 30. Job is now addressing Eliphaz and his other friends. And he says, he who withholds kindness from a friend forsakes the fear of the Almighty. My brothers are treacherous as a torrent bed, as torrential streams that pass away. which are dark with ice, and where the snow hides itself. When they melt, they disappear. When it's hot, they vanish from their place. The caravans turn aside from their course. They go up into the waste and perish. The caravans of Tema look, and travelers of Sheba hope. They are ashamed because they were confident. They come there and are disappointed. For you have become nothing. I'm going to talk about that, verse 21. For you have become nothing. You see my calamity and are afraid. Have I said to you, this is Job asking his friends, have I ever said to you, make me a gift? Or from your wealth, offer me a bribe? Have I ever asked you for a bribe? Or have I ever said to you, deliver me from the adversary's hand, or redeem me from the hand of the ruthless? Have I ever asked y'all to get me out of any trouble? Or have I ever asked y'all for a bribe? And then Job says to them, teach me. You tell me something and I'll be quiet. Make me understand, he says in verse 24, how I have gone astray. Show me what I've done wrong. He says to them, how forceful are upright words. But what does reproof from you reprove? In other words, he's saying, y'all telling me that I have done something wrong. You show me what I've done wrong. And I'm also saying to you, Job says, that the words of your reproof aren't doing anything, because you don't have anything to say. Do you think that you can reprove words when the speech of a despairing man is wind? You would even cast lots over the fatherless and bargain over your friend. But now be pleased to look at me, for I will not lie to your face. Please turn, let no injustice be done. Turn now, my vindication is at stake. Is there any injustice on my tongue? Cannot my palate discern the cause of calamity? Okay, I'm going to go down through some of these verses that I just read, bring out some of them, and I'm going to try to finish up Job chapter 6. Now, the reason why I called this observation, Job eats Eliphaz's head and kicks it back to him. When I was a kid, breakdancing was the thing. And I was never, ever a good dancer, but I would try sometimes because everybody was breakdancing. But we had this thing where, and some of y'all remember it, some of y'all old people like me remember from the 80s. There was this thing where, you would get into a dance off against somebody else. So y'all both break dancing, doing the electric boogaloo and all that kind of stuff. And you would get into, the center of the circle of all these people, and you would be going against somebody. And you would do all your best breakdancing moves, and then you kind of kick it back to the other person. Like you do a few moves, and then you kick it back to them so they can do a few moves against you. And, everybody's, rooting somebody on, trying to determine who is the best dancer. So you're doing a few moves and you kick it back and forth to the opponent. But then one of the dancers, would really feel like they were trying to outdance the other person. So they would mock the motion of taking the other person's head off of their shoulders, act like they were eating it, and then they would make some moves with the head, down in their stomach and do some moves, and then they would bring the head back up and put it back on the other person's shoulders. And then, everybody standing around would say, ooh, he ate his head. He ate his head. So that meant that you just threw down the gauntlet. You ate somebody's head. So now, this whole dance off is going to another level. Somebody has been called to the carpet. So you need to pull out your best moves now, or just get out the circle, because you got your head eaten. Somebody ate your head. So you need to come up with your best stuff or get out. And so Job eats Eliphaz's head. I mean, Job just lays it down on Eliphaz. Verse 14, he says, who withholds kindness from a friend or forsakes whoever withholds kindness from a friend forsakes the fear of the Almighty. My brothers are treacherous as a torrent bed, as torrential streams that pass away. And he goes on with that for a little while. Job is saying, you are not showing me kindness You are not even making the effort to understand me. You are assuming that I'm guilty of something when you don't even know the facts. You must lack the fear of God yourself to treat a friend this way. You must not have the fear of God, Job was saying to Eliphaz, or you wouldn't be treating me this way. You're not even trying to understand what I'm saying or where I'm coming from. But in verse 25, that's where he goes deep on them. And before that, even before he gets to verse 25, he says, if you guys are telling me that I've got sin or there's some issue, there's some reason that I had this come upon me, then y'all need to prove it. Y'all need to show it. Point it out to me. Let me know. Verse 24. Teach me, and I'll shut up and just listen to you if you can make me understand how I have gone astray. Right? But then in verse 25, he says, for you have now become nothing. You see my calamity and you're afraid. Now, this is huge. This is huge. And I'm stressing this huge aspect of what Job is trying to teach us because it's one of the main points that I want to bring out of the entire study of the book. And I'll touch on it several more times throughout the study. But Job recognizes something very true about his friends. He says, you guys cannot be helpful to me because you see what I'm going through and you're scared of it. You'll hear me say this again and again. I've preached on it several times. The reason why Job's friends are locked into the idea that he has done something wrong, either big or small, either overt or hidden, but they believe he did something wrong and they're locked into that idea because if they entertain the possibility that a man can go through this kind of living hell without having done anything wrong, then how can they be assured in their own minds that they would never have to go through it? They are addicted to the need to have the kind of peace of mind that comes from believing that as long as they behave and they do the right thing and they live the right way and they obey God and they live upright, that everything will always go peachy keen with them. But Job eats their head and he points out to them, y'all don't want to believe in me because y'all scared that it's possible for this to happen to you, even if you don't deserve it. And it was the truth. And that's the same reason why people do that today. There's a lot of people that will tell you, a lot of preachers that will preach to you, if you just love God and obey him and do the right things, everything will always go well for you. Everything will always be great. Everything will always be blessed in your life if you just do the right things and love God and be God-fearing and walk in holiness. And you know what? You should love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength and all your mind. You should fear him. You should serve him. You should obey him. You should honor him. You should keep his word. Absolutely, 100,000%, for sure. Absolutely, yes. But doing these things does not guarantee you this wonderful, super duper blessed life. What we want, I heard Francis Chan say this, and it really blesses me every time I think about it, that we've come into an era where when we get Jesus, we want to say that because I have Jesus, now I have this super duper wonderful life where nothing will ever go wrong for me. And so when we get Jesus, we want all of these blessings. But the cool thing about having Jesus is not that you get all these blessings. The cool thing about having Jesus is that you get Jesus. The greatest thing about having Jesus is having Jesus. Not having stuff that Jesus does for you. The coolest thing about having Jesus is having Jesus. So Job ate their head. Job said, you guys are not being helpful to me. You're telling me that, I have some type of sin issue in my life. That's why everything went wrong, why everything went bad. He said, but the real reason that you guys are looking at me, and I can tell that you're afraid, and you can't be helpful to me because of your own fear, because you don't want to deal with the idea that a good, God-fearing, God-loving, God-serving, innocent man can have this kind of thing happen to him. Now, I'm going off script a little bit. I've got a lot of notes because I don't say all of this stuff off the top of my head. Some of the things you're hearing me saying, I'm just saying it, off the top of my head. A lot of the things that I'm saying are coming from notes that I have written down. But this is really important, and it's a huge aspect. It's one of the main themes that I want you to see coming out of the book of Job and how it applies to our lives. There's too many good people, y'all. I'm talking to whoever is listening to this. There's too many good people in this world. But when I say good, I don't mean perfect, because there literally is no perfect person. But I'm talking about people that I know, people that I have met, people that I have interacted with, people that I have talked to, people that I care about, people that I love, that I know they're not perfect. There is literally no one who's perfect. But I'm talking about people who love God. I'm talking about people not who never, ever, ever make a mistake, but people who live a upright life. People who love God with all of their soul and all of their heart and all of their mind and all of their strength. People who are endeavoring to live their life the way God prescribes that they live it. People who are trying to be excellent fathers to their children, and excellent mothers to their children, and excellent husbands to their wives, and excellent wives to their husbands, and excellent brothers and sisters to other members of the body of Christ. I'm talking about good people who have some messed up stuff that happen in their lives, that you look at them and you say, they don't deserve that. And you still have people who are afraid of that, just like Job's friends. You have people who look at people who their child gets cancer. The husband or the wife gets into a fatal car accident and the spouse is lost. I'm trying to think of some other actual examples, not even making stuff off the top of my head, but situations that I actually know about. People who just get extremely, extremely sick and become debilitated and can't live normally for the rest of their lives. And I happen to know that even though these people are not perfect, because no one is, these are people who are doing their best to live the way God wants them to live. And I would say that there's a whole lot of people that I happen to know personally, watching other people's lives, watching other people's lifestyle, that if we were going by, how much sin you have in your life, or we were going by, how many mistakes you make, or we were going by, on a scale of 1 to 10, how godly are you? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much fear of God do you have? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much holiness do you walk in? I know a lot of people that are walking in level 4 holiness, and their lives look great. And I know some people who are walking in level 8, level 9 holiness, and they're having some hell going on in their lives. But there are folks out there who want to say, if you have some trouble going on in your life, it's got to be some reason. And the reason why they're saying that is because they are afraid that they can't be in control of whether or not stuff is breaking loose in their life. If you believe that all hardship and all difficulty and all calamity and all pain and all hurt and all jacked up stuff that happens in somebody's life can be controlled by how you live and how you behave, then you can believe that if you live and behave a certain way, you can control whether or not these bad things happen to you ever or not. And Job said, you guys are freaking out. You guys are scared because you don't want to think that good old Job, your boy Job, I'm your boy, right? Y'all want to believe that I'm doing something wrong, because if I'm not doing something wrong, then that is telling you that y'all are not in control of whether bad stuff happens to y'all. Job just busted him out. He just told him that's what he said to him. So I'm gonna leave y'all with that thought. Job's speech will continue in chapter 7, but I'm gonna go ahead and stop here for now at the end of chapter 6, because even though Job continues on speaking in chapter 7, I don't want to lump chapter 6 and 7 together the way I did with Eliphaz's speech, because Eliphaz's speech went from chapter 4 and chapter 5. But I don't want to, so I lump those two together. But I don't want to lump Job's chapter 6 and chapter 7 together, because Job has some more things to say in chapter 7 that I kind of want to still focus on. And it gets kind of heavy because Job goes from, at the beginning of chapter 6 that we read, he was saying some things to God and he was addressing God. But then most of the chapter he was addressing his friends, where he called them out, ate their head. But in chapter 7, he goes back to most of chapter 7 is him addressing God. And so that's something that I really want to get into, because, it gets into that lamentation. It gets into, the way that some of us who can relate to this, the way you feel when the most difficult thing in the world, to me, one of the most difficult things that I've had to deal with in my Christian walk, and I'm really trying to close this up. I'm being like the old preachers, and I'm about to close. But one of the most difficult things that I have had to deal with in my what has it been now? 36 years of being a Christian. I accepted Jesus Christ as my personal savior when I was 12 years old. And so it's been 36 years. And one of the most difficult things that I've had to deal with in my 36 years has been when I've gone through the times where, my problem was not with outside things, or my problem was not with, I wish I had more money, or my problem was not with, I'm having issues with someone that I love, or, me and Tiff are going through something that we have to work through, or I'm going through something with my job and it's very difficult and I'm hating it, But the times that have been the most difficult, and Job is going to talk about this in chapter 7, and he's really going to get into it more in other chapters. But the most difficult times have been when my problem is with God. When my pain, I feel like, is coming from my relationship with God. And to me, that's the worst kind of pain, because God is the one I run to when I have pain. But what do you do with your pain when your pain is coming from the one that you want to run to with your pain? Does anybody feel me? I know that I'm talking into a computer. I cannot hear anybody saying amen or anything like that. But man, if you want to say amen, please say that, because that's a tough place to be. And that's why I'm so interested and enthralled with the book of Job, because he's going through so many things, and he went through all these things thousands of years ago, that I'm here, born in 1970, going through my life, that I just relate to so deeply. So in chapter 7, I want to take that by itself. Job has a lot of things that he wants to say to God and telling God how he feels, still speaking a little bit rashly. He might say some things, that, if it ends up getting him in trouble later, his attitude is like, so be it. But I got some stuff I need to say. So we'll get into chapter 7 next time, and I'll get it out there as soon as I can post it. I love y'all. Peace to you all.